Happy Thursday, everybody. How are we all doing? Thursday, 31st of October 2024. A little bit of delay on the video this week with the knock on of the bank holiday. So this week's talk, and just to start off with those that couldn't be with us, get well soon. Those that are on holidays, enjoy, and please bring back some sunshine. And this week's talk is titled Practices to Break the People Pleasing Cycle. Okay, so I'm just looking at the talk that I have here on the wall. And these are practices that we are all guilty of people pleasing, maybe in all aspects of our life. It could be in our work life, it could be married, partnership, grandchildren, uncles, sisters, nieces, nephews, neighbours, all the whole mix is in there. So these are practices that we need to break, because people pleasing is a trigger for us to overeat or overindulge in the wrong type of food. So up first, what we have is to refrain from basically your abilities, underplaying what your abilities are. We all have things that we excel at and that we are good at, and we all have things that we're not so good at. So not to downplay what our abilities are, or sometimes someone could say you're great at that, or you have a great skill or whatever, and we downplay it and say, oh, do you think so? Or we kind of pass it off that way. So it's to refrain from doing that. Second then is speak for longer than what you normally would. Because sometimes when we're people pleasing, we let the other person talk because we're trying to keep the peace, and we kind of back down into a corner and we think it's just easier, let them talk. I'm not going to waste my energy on talking, and it's keeping the other person happy for them to talk. So I want us to really practice talking for longer than what we normally would, so that we're not in that zone of the people pleasing. Number 3 on that list then is delay responding until you have the energy to. So we don't have to be jumping on text messages or phone calls. Wait until you have the energy, the mental capacity, maybe sometimes the physical capacity to engage. But just delay that responding, that we don't have to jump as soon as the phone rings, or we get an email, or we get a text message, or there's a knock on the door. We don't have to jump to that. Our next one then is refrain from living someone else's problem. So again, we're guilty of that. We can take on other people's problems as if we don't have enough of our own. Everyone that I know has a big bagload of their own problems, myself included. So refrain from living someone else's problem. Yes, be there to be supportive, but not to take that on and live in that person's problem, because again, that's people pleasing. And most of us probably know someone who kind of dumps all their feelings and their emotions, and then they walk away elated, and then we're left carrying that baggage. Again, that can be triggers when it's playing on our mind and we're reliving it, to overeat or indulge in the wrong type of food. And it's really not a form of self-care by doing that. Decline an invitation that doesn't interest you. So especially coming up to the Christmas season, parties, meetups, different things like that is in there. But if it doesn't suit us, rather than just say, oh, I better go because X, Y, and Z came to my event, or different things like that. If it doesn't interest you, or it's physically or mentally challenging for you to get there, because sometimes what happens, I've done it myself in the past, you say, I'll slip in late and I wonder if I'd leave about 11 or 12, I'll drive and I'll just slip out and maybe nobody will notice. And again, that is the biggest form of people pleasing. Doing something that does not sit well with us, or it doesn't interest us at that particular time. So a nice way to refrain from an invitation is to say, thank you so much for the invite, I hope you have a wonderful time, I just can't make this one, maybe the next time, without getting into the big elaborate story. Next one we have is practice accepting a compliment. So again, there are things that we can be pitfalls. Someone might say, for the women, your hair was lovely. We might say, oh God, that needs a wash, or that needs a cut, or it needs a colour. Or someone might say, that's a nice dress, or that's a nice jacket. Oh, this is Penny's last year's, this is now rag, or different things, or this is my weigh-in clothes. That's the biggest thing that I would probably hear. So when we get a compliment, because they are few and far between nowadays, is to say thank you very much with a smile, and take the compliment rather than getting into, again, that explanation or that people pleasing. Our next one says, don't laugh at something you don't think is funny. So I thought that was an interesting one. We all know a jokester, we all know a prankster, and sometimes we say, I better laugh at their joke because they think that they're funny when really that they're not funny. And I also think when we're in group settings, we feel that we have to laugh at a joke. As mentioned in class, there's an awful lot of crude jokes out there. Even sometimes when I'm listening to the radio, probably a sign of getting old, I think to myself, is this really on radio, on daytime radio, what I'm hearing here? And don't feel that we have to laugh, stand for what our values are, because sometimes what happens is we go along with things to people please when really it doesn't sit right with us. We don't really think that it's funny in that situation, and we don't want to be the odd one out, because it's easier to go with the flow of things. So again, with the people pleasing, it's not about looking for an argy-bargy or an argument. It's about what we talked about, a lead in from last week's talk about having those hard and difficult conversations, is to be assertive and not aggressive. So that's really key there. Our next one is refrain from doing more than your fair share. So again, that could be in a work environment, it could be in a relationship environment, it could be in some community classes that we might do. Refrain from doing the extra, because we can jump in and try and fix everything, then we have ourselves run ragged. And as I always say, for any relationship to work, friendship, partners, husbands, wives, kids, grandkids, both have to be equally invested. That 50% coming from either side, not 70-30 or maybe 90-10 or maybe 100% all one way. So it's important not to do too much, put too much investment in that we're not really seeing the return on it. And that's not what friendship is about. It's not seeing the return. It's about being there, and I understand that, but sometimes it can be one person doing all the chasing, or it could be in work that we stay late all the time, and maybe extra shifts is given on us because maybe our work colleagues, they might have kids, they might have younger kids, they have parents to look after, and we kind of jump in. And again, it's about leaving ourselves ragged and people pleasing, and not people pleasing ourselves. And to ask that question, who is people pleasing? Me. Okay. Our next one then says, let there be silences or pauses in conversations. Because sometimes we jump in, if we're again in a group setting, it might be a little bit of awkwardness, and you feel gotta better say something, the conversation's gone dead on that, and we feel the one that has to jump in. I always think the pause is good, because the information or what has been talked about can settle, and then maybe the conversation can restart or can move on to the next topic. But let there be silences or let there be pauses. We don't have to keep on talking all the time. Our last one then, it says refrain from apologising if you haven't done anything wrong. Okay, so sometimes we can jump in again. That's one of the ones of keeping the peace. As an Irish thing, lift up the rug, brush everything under, because it's easier not to say anything because we don't want that person to react. So remember what we learned in class about responding and not reacting to situations. So to respond, but sometimes we say, oh, if I say that, or if I go against that person, there'll be this upheaval or something will be said. So sometimes say nothing and keep that other person happy. But it's important to keep yourself happy. You're just as important. So our little motto for this week is, you are not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. So that's a deep one. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. So I hope that helps, but practices to break the people pleasing cycle that we're all very guilty of, and to stop and ask that question, who is people pleasing me? So I hope that information helps. Any positive, negative feedback, you know the drill, to get in touch. And I'll see us all next week. Hard to believe we're into the month of November. 7 more weigh-ins before Christmas. £1 a week, half a stone. £2 equals 1 stone. Come on, we've got this, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get it together. Keep the food diary. Watch those little treats, trick-or-treaters tonight, and just stay focused, drinking our water and keeping our food diary. Watching portion size is really important. And I look forward to seeing you all next week in a brand new show. Have a good one, folks. Bye-bye.